Hello, everyone. Welcome to R&R episode 10. So Ricardo and I are just getting set up real quick so you can get comfortable. I think today's going to be a interesting episode. Ricardo and I are going to get into some of the lessons that we're working on right now, actually pertaining to loving kindness and how that's actually unfolding for both of us. So, and now we're tuned in on Instagram as well.
Give me 1 second, Paul. Perfect.
And here we are, R&R episode 10, Ricardo. So let's get started. I think the subject that has been coming up a lot in our recent conversations between you and I and our cultivator friends is the idea, the force of loving kindness as a lived experience, and some of the things that can start to come up that block that, or that it itself has a purifying effect on consciousness and on our practice. So looking at the role of love or loving kindness over the course of your last 10 years meditating, what has that looked like as the years have gone by, and what's happening now?
It's not till really recently where I started to really dive in on what is loving kindness, what does it look like, what is the experience of it. Prior to that, just to give people a little bit of a background, I was purely focused on cultivating awareness, any form of enlightenment, any form of even psychic abilities, so to speak, you can say. Because if you read the Buddhist texts, you'll see that the more you meditate, these things arise. There's these things that are but a byproduct of your practice that tell you about clairvoyance or clairaudience, like all these weird, interesting things. Right? So it's not till later that I found out, it's good to practice those things, but at a certain point, you have to practice love and kindness. There's no other way. If you want to go further with your spiritual practice, if you want to be really strict about your practice, you do have to practice love and kindness. And so recently what's been coming up with my practice of love and really going into it, several things come up, which is one is how you get to look at how unconditional love is and what does that mean? What does the unconditioned mean? We love to show love to certain groups of people, certain identities, certain things about ourselves. But really, the unconditioned is the unconditioned. It's the totality of who you are and who is another person. It's not judging that person, but it's literally experiencing who they are. There's no label behind it. There's no identity or categorization behind it. And so really honing in on that, even for yourself, it's so difficult. And like today in my practice and like when I was meditating, things were coming up of anger, right? There was anger coming up in my meditation recently. And again, it arised. But people don't understand, you have to love that too. You have to love the thought of anger. You have to love the feeling of powerlessness. And so it's important for a person on the path to understand love is everything. Love is both the negative, what you view as negative, and the positive, and beyond that. So I don't know about you, Ryan.
Yeah, I think love is and by love we're referring to love as an essence or as a force, or I guess we could call it like a divine love, one that's not, we're not just talking about the love that you have for a friend or the love that you have for a family member. Generally in this conversation, we're talking about kind of unconditioned loving kindness. In the Bible, there's a quote about what is the use of love if you only love the people that love you. Even murderers love the people that love them. But the test of loving kindness really is, can we extend that to people that we have negative feelings towards, or that we have animosity towards, or that we, for one reason or another, separate ourselves from? In practice, this particular concept, or this particular power of love, it was really there in the beginning for me, at least. Many years ago, I had a YouTube channel, and I still have one, but back then it was right when YouTube was starting to get very popular, and I had a channel, and I spoke a lot about love and lucid dreaming and meditation and spirituality and all the kinds of things that I was going through at the time. And it was really coming from a place of just wanting to share and help people with this information and with what I was going through. I found that when I began to study Buddhism and when I began to get overly conceptual about spirituality and about practice, I found that those concepts and those beliefs really, in a way, hindered that original love essence that was there in the beginning. It's kind of like you have this very, very profound light, and gradually the light gets dimmer and dimmer as the conceptual mind and as your ideas about spirituality increase and become more reified and solid. So by the time I had done my first meditation retreat, I think I was already much more shut off, at least in the heart center, compared to how I was when I had started the YouTube channel a couple of years after that. And despite having that profound love energy, there was no wakefulness. I didn't have presence. The mind wasn't cognizant or awakened to its essential nature. So it took 10 years or so to actually wake up to presence and to begin to live that presence and to have a kind of qualitatively different experience of life than how it was in the beginning. But the love is exactly what I'm personally working on now, having that come to fruition and having that expand. In Buddhism particularly, there's the heart practices. So there are meditations that are actually for this specific thing. They're called the divine protections, the divine abidings, the Brahma Viharas, that's the Pali for it. They are loving kindness, empathetic joy, compassion, and equanimity. Yeah, so these 4 subjects are actually taken up in meditation. A person can do them every day, or they can go into a retreat to do them. And they're very powerful. They're protection meditations for a reason, because there can be a lot of harshness to the kinds of insights that happen as a result of practicing. You look inside yourself and all you see is empty presence. You don't see a person anymore. That's difficult for some people. So you have these divine abiding meditations, these loving kindness meditations that are just so beautiful and so helpful. And it's interesting, just when you start to do, it seems that reality gives you more of what you are. So as soon as a person starts to do the loving kindness practice, all kinds of unusual things start to happen. The person you're doing the loving kindness for could give you a phone call. Just it's very interesting to see how reality and the environment actually responds to consciousness is based in loving kindness.
You bring up something interesting, because I remember my teacher once told me how he was in the airport, and when he was checking in his bags, the person was really annoyed and angry for whatever reason, and all he did was spread love and kindness to that person, and it just shifted everything. It just changed. Most of us react. It's like, oh God, this person, like, what's her problem? But can you step back and send love and kindness to her, and to the even the action, the thought forms that come up? Because again, many of us will just, oh God, I this person, I hate this person. She's annoying. But sending that love and kindness to all these things does change a lot of actions throughout the day, the future, and the past. For some reason, when you start to do love and kindness, you actually start to almost shift things from your childhood. We think this is from the past, but it's almost still present. Those things, those traumas, the pain. And once you start to cultivate love and kindness for that little kid, things just, you start to go through emotional detox. But there's a side that I'm experiencing with love and kindness that's coming up, which is it's almost this weird thing that happens where the more you start to love even the negative side, the more you're going to see. So before, the repression and the suppression of emotions, it's like you have a soda can and you just shook it. Okay, you were shaking it for a long time. The love and kindness opens that up, splashes it all over yourself. Because now you're actually starting to be comfortable with experiencing the pain, the depression, the anger. But that's the point. Like you start to ease through it. You start to be gentle. And the point is, love and kindness is a form of being gentle with yourself. And many of us are always gung-ho. In society, we're gung-ho. Like, oh, I need to go from step A to step B. You see it all over Instagram. You see it all over just everything's, you go here, you do this, and you shouldn't take any time off. That's not gentleness. When a tree grows, it's not forcing itself to grow. It's just being. Just doing. It's doing it at its own pace, so natural. And so, yeah, that's what's coming up, especially for me, Ryan. Like the pain and being comfortable with it. Because again, before it wasn't. Love and kindness wasn't my primary focus.
Yeah, and these things could look differently depending on the person and the situation. A person who, for one person, it may be natural to just sit around and do nothing, and to just play video games and watch TV. And you could say that from what's for that person, coming from a place of loving kindness and understanding, being tough on that person and telling him to get off his butt and do something with his life may actually be the most helpful thing. It depends on the situation, on the circumstance. There is a teacher named Master Nanhua Chin, who after meditating for some years, he just got tired of not being able to sit longer. And so he decided to lock himself in a room, and he told his teachers, don't come get me until I leave this room. And so he locked himself up for several days. He said the pain in his legs was so unbearable, he was on the floor in fetal position. But he continued to sit, and eventually the chi channels in his legs opened up, and he was able to sit for very, very long periods of time after that. We're talking 12 hours or a day or days. So it was out of his love for the Dharma and out of his commitment to the path that he did that. And that sounds like a very extreme thing. It sounds absolutely extreme that you would go that far, basically torturing yourself. But the things that are done out of inspiration and done out of love and duty, they almost always bear incredible fruit. And Master Nan's ability to meditate after that was drastically different. He no longer had to worry about pain or numbness in his legs, and many times after that, he referenced that period in his training, and he just said, after that day, after that moment, he never had an issue with his legs again. That was no longer a problem in his cultivation. So
I think you bring up a point, which is duty. Like a person's duty. What does that even mean? A person's life path. What a person is supposed to do for this life. Most of us think of it logically. I know what to do. Maybe it's through society that told you. Maybe it's your parents. Oh, be a nurse. Oh, take over my business. But once you start to focus on your love, once you start to focus on compassion, you'll start to actually align everything much more comfortably on your duty in life, what you're supposed to do in this life. Imagine not ever cultivating loving kindness. Like maybe you'll get a sense of what you're supposed to do if you're lucky. But the point of loving kindness, really understanding and being comfortable with life itself, pushes you to take the direction that you're supposed to go, because it's a part of surrender. It's a part of letting go. And what it surrender is this concept that your ego doesn't get in the way, but it has a sense of love in it. It has a sense of direction and grace. Like there's so many times in my past where, especially after being a monk, I came out of it and I had all these thoughts of society, and I'm like, okay, society is like this, so I have to adjust to it. And so I was falling prey to societal norms, right? And I tried and forced until there was one day where I decided, okay, no more forcing. I'm going to step back and try to refocus on myself, try to love where I'm at and see where I can go from here. And it completely changed.
yeah, I think the radical self-acceptance is a profound concept and an incredibly transformative thing. A lot of the things that we think are wrong with us, or that we think are negative or bad qualities, they're only so oftentimes because society tells us that that's the case, or because other people have told us, or we have a lot of judgments and ideas about what we are, who we are, what we're supposed to do. And the truth is, a lot of those ideas, we don't really know if they're true or not. You know, even when it comes to your purpose, I mean, is purpose something that you find, or is it something that you create? It's a good question. It's probably a little bit of both. But if we're able to really embrace ourselves, I mean, one of the objects of loving kindness is your body, your mind, yourself, your life. And to be having that image of yourself in your mind and your own wholesome qualities, those are the objects of the loving kindness meditation. We can get this idea that loving kindness is about the words, and that we're supposed to be like getting into this feeling of the words. I mean, I know some people teach it that way, but that's not how it's originally taught. The source of the wholesome qualities in the mind in loving kindness meditation is the wholesome qualities of the object. In this case, you are the object. So it's your own wholesome qualities. And meditating on that brightens your mind. It makes it happy. And you're able to have continuous mindfulness and really meditate on that. But it's actually the object. It's not trying to make yourself feel a certain way. That's not loving kindness. Loving kindness is when you completely, totally embrace, accept, and open yourself up to the wholesome qualities of the object. So that could be yourself. It could be another person. It could be a group of people. It could be all beings. There's variations here. Some of them, for example, meditation on an enemy. I don't know how many people have enemies, but there's probably some that are listening that have one or so. But we take the enemy, this person that we have a lot of animosity towards, and we meditate on them, and we get in touch with their wholesome qualities. Someone that we don't like, we open ourselves enough to recognize even the goodness in that person, even if there's only a shred of it. Even if there's only a shred. So this is the power of loving kindness. Really, it allows us to have a mind that doesn't categorize things. It doesn't box people into this and that, and that isn't so prone to aversion and craving. That's really what, I mean, Ricardo and I, so many people listening to this even, have done Vipassana retreats. And the whole essence of that retreat is to overcome this trap of craving and aversion. Constantly, we are running towards things we like and running away from things that we don't like. And that creates all of the suffering, a lot of the suffering in life. We want the things that we don't have, and we don't want the things that we do have, for the things that are facing us that are uncomfortable. So this loving kindness really helps give birth and give rise to an unconditioned mind, a mind that isn't going to be swayed by the emotions or the feelings of the day, or the opinions you have about yourself or about another person that day. You're coming from a loving kindness that is really born from stillness. And that's what happens when we meditate on loving kindness. The qualities of that person in the meditation, that's its influence on the mind stream allows a kind of stillness combined with these wholesome qualities to arise. And it's actually a really easy way to meditate if a person can give it a shot and really do it, because it's like a positive feedback loop. When you're doing loving kindness on an object that you actually already love, it's a pleasurable thing to hold that in your mind's eye. So if Ricardo was to do a loving kindness on his dog and what his dog meant to him and her wholesome qualities, that's immediately going to make him heartfelt and happy. So.
Yeah, and it's something that came up was a lot of people when they practice meditation, it could be this unconscious escapism. Like, I want to escape, even if you've been a meditator for a long time. It's like, oh, I want to escape to nirvana. I want to go to heaven. And that's cool. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to be able to enjoy life. Enjoy being human. Love your circumstances. Love where you are. And for me, that was hard in the beginning. I mean, the very first thing very first reason why I even started practicing meditation was to heal myself from pain. And maybe it was a form of love at the time, but it later became, okay, I need to push this out. Like, I started to force it. There was no love for the given situations and love for where I was at the time. And that's hard, and I get it. It's very hard to love at certain times where you're depressed and sad. But the whole point of even loving your enemy, you may not have an enemy, but the enemy may be yourself unconsciously. And it's important to send love and kindness to that side. And part of what Ryan was saying, again, was this love and kindness is part of stillness and how important stillness is. It's this stillness in the quiet mind. You start to really experience what things are. Like you won't understand what things really are until that peace and stillness is there. You may look at me as a person, as this and that, but that's limiting. When you have love and when you have stillness, you get to see the whole person's being. And that's the beautiful part. It's like when you go out to nature, it's totally different than, oh yeah, you read a book about nature, but when you actually go to nature, what happens to you? There's this peace, there's this really refined state. It's like, oh, why do I love it so much? It's so peaceful. Yeah, because your mind is starting to quiet. The clutter isn't there. Imagine having that 24/7. So it takes time. It takes stillness and love.
When I think of my own practice over the last 10 years or so, this idea of loving kindness and self-acceptance, I see that it's so easy to overlook because there's so much of spirituality and meditation that's very glamorous. You want to raise your kundalini and open your chakras, and you want the Arcturians to land and all this stuff. So that's all fine. I'm actually for I'm all for whatever it is that a person's practicing. But by ignoring the loving kindness, it's easy to basically skip over the inseparability or the unity aspect of spiritual unfolding. So in the Theravada school and the tradition that I was still really a part of, they emphasize a lot of emptiness, and that's still the truth. Things are empty, but it's also the truth that everything's connected. Everything is interconnected. So there's a unity aspect to spiritual awakening and unfolding, and the heart center is very related to that. So what can happen is you can have this realization of emptiness or this awakening that is really happening like up here. It's a very crown chakra, head chakra thing that's going on. And there could be this sense of not being what you used to be. It's like you're not exactly identifying with ego anymore, but now what's coming to the forefront is this emptiness. And suddenly you're not really what you used to be. You're not really what you thought you were all of these years. And that could be destabilizing. So the actual, in my opinion, the antidote to this specific harsh side of realizing emptiness, or it's experienced as harsh, is loving kindness. And because that practice and making that your dharma really opens a person up here and allows for the inseparability to become cognized and noticed. So you start to have the experience of not being different, not being separate from other people or even from objects. You start to feel that there's at times you don't know where your hands end and where the object you're touching begins. That's inseparability, and the modern term for that is non-duality. But if we just ignore the loving kindness stuff and just don't address it, because the truth is it's uncomfortable for a lot of us to actually go into our mind and meditate on the wholesome qualities of our inner child. You know how painful that is? for so many people. Oh, too painful. Not going to go there. That's what happens. That happens to a lot of us as practitioners. And I've noticed that the parts of my life and the parts of the journey thus far that were the most difficult were actually the ones that had the most important lessons. The thing that I really didn't want to look at was the thing that I absolutely had to look at in order to get to the next lesson, in order for more unfolding to occur.
And that's karma. What is karma? It's this cycle that continues always until you get the lesson, until you understand the lesson, right? And you bring up a good point where, like, for me, I never wanted to practice loving kindness. Again, I just wanted to practice emptiness. And somewhat, it could be a form of escapism. And like you were addressing again, Ryan, it sounds like you're almost agreeing with me where you're loving this. When you start to experience the inseparability of you and an object, you start to really love the circumstances at hand, whatever the case may be. And unfortunately, love and kindness today is somewhat tainted in teachings in certain areas. What is common knowledge of love and kindness? What is that? It's usually a feeling. It's like it's very limiting at times. I don't know what else did they say about love and kindness today, Ryan?
Loving kindness is now being taught as purely as a way to feel better about yourself. So it's coming from a place of it's coming more from the therapeutic or psychological end, self-help end of the spectrum, which is fine. I mean, if it helps people, but that's really not how the practice was intended, what the practice was intended for. So, for example, you're not supposed to just stop at you yourself as the object. And it's not supposed to be the case where you're meditating on the words and making yourself feel better. You're recognizing the inherent qualities of goodness in the object, which would be you. So it's that is a subtle difference, but there's a major difference there. One is trying to make yourself feel better, and the other is recognizing inherent qualities of goodness. And also there's other objects of loving kindness, like other people, and meditating on a person that harmed you or an enemy. And I'm not sure how much of that is even being taught. So,
well, like the enemy part, like how many, like you have yourself. I think self is a lot easier, right? That's the thing. We love to do things that are easy. Yeah, I'll spread love and kindness to myself. It's the easiest. But and there's nothing wrong with it. That's a good start, obviously. But go further. Go further to your teachers, your family, your friends, and then your enemies. Why is that so important? I think if you do have enemies, if you have these things that are negative in your mind, they're not going to cloud you anymore. They're not going to distract you. When you're sitting down, actually just doing regular shamatha or emptiness practices or concentration practices, these thoughts that arise are purified because they're through love now. Now take that same situation of just a simple thought. Now when you're out in society and someone cuts you off right after yoga class, you can send them love and kindness now. There's not a problem. And how limiting are we to do our practice just when we're sitting down or when we're just in a class? That's good. There's nothing inherently wrong with it because you're trying, but now take it further where you can take in society, you can take it around the house, And that's very difficult, but really practice that, and it'll completely change. It'll completely change and shift certain circumstances that you're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always easy to have love and kindness of familiar objects, or it's always easy to have faith when things are going well. But when things are not going well and when circumstances are difficult, are you able to continue to have faith? When you're upset at a person or upset at a situation or even upset at yourself, are you able to be loving and kind to yourself or to that person in that moment? I think one of the best indicators of progress in our practice is the changes that happen when it comes to our reactions. If you've done it right, you notice that you're not reacting the way that you used to specific conditions and circumstances. If you've done enough, you find that certain problems that you used to have, you don't have those problems anymore. And certain ways that you used to feel about yourself and other people, and certain things that you used to think about yourself and other people, you just don't think those things anymore. For example, the antidote to judgment is loving kindness. You really see yourself as different from somebody else, so that's why you judge them. But from a place of loving kindness, if you're able to see that you're not all that different, aside from the circumstances you're born in and genetics and whatnot, but essentially you're a human being. That person's a human being. If you're able to strip away the externalities and just see the essence of a thing, then that loving kindness is really able to come forward. But we have to surrender a part of ourselves to do that. When we're judging another person, or when I judge another person, or when I have judged another person, what's the thing that needs to be dropped in order to actually accept that person in the situation? The notion that I think I'm right, the notion that I think I'm better. That's what needs to be surrendered. We have this idea that we're better, that we're special, that we're superior to other people, and all of those concepts and ideas just reinforce duality and ignorance. And really, I'll say it. It's a kind of spiritual darkness if we really examine it.
Yeah, it's a spiritual trap essentially when those things happen. And when one of my favorite things when you're spreading love and kindness is spread it to people that disagree with you. Spread it to people that, like, you may not hate them, but you dislike them. For example, is maybe a lot of people dislike rich people. Maybe some people dislike an idea. Maybe you may think your spiritual teaching or your spiritual practice is the highest practice. Spread it to those that you disagree with, and you start to see the negative attributes of your mind start to really dwindle away, and you start to really experience what these saints, these bodhisattvas, these people that of the past really feel or are experiencing, that love and kindness for people. And essentially, I'll take love and kindness over any other practice of shamatha or anything, or vipassana or tantra. If it's based on love and kindness, it's I'd rather take that than anything, only because I fell in a trap where I wanted emptiness, which was cool. I had great spiritual experiences, but having that no love condition was somewhat limiting and painful, to be honest.
And I think that these different realizations, in a way, they have a price, they have a cost. What's the cost of emptiness? What's the cost of realizing presence, or realizing an unbounded type of consciousness? The price of that is a limited consciousness. The thing that is surrendered to get omniscience is ego. That's literally what happens. So when it comes to loving kindness, the what needs to be surrendered for loving kindness, to have loving kindness towards people, towards another person. I mean, it could be many things. Maybe a very solid, special, different sense of self is one, and maybe it's judgment towards another person, judgment towards people, and distaste towards people. That is something else that needs to be surrendered in order for that natural loving kindness really to begin to stream forth. So much of, no one ever talks about the surrender. No one ever talks about the costs of what practitioners pay in the spiritual journey and in the unfolding. Like, we all talk about the non-duality, and we talk about the awakening, and we talk about how incredible all of that is, but we rarely talk about what had to be done for that to unfold, and really how difficult some of those lessons and some of those things were. I mean, imagine you have this great spiritual future before you and your purpose and everything, but the only thing between that purpose and where you currently are right now is your current concept of who you are, what you think you are, and all of your specialness. Could you actually surrender all of your specialness for some unknown future? Do you have enough faith to do that? Do you have enough faith? I mean, did I have enough faith all those years ago to leave everything that I knew to go chase some wild, crazy spiritual adventure in a foreign country in some jungle? So yeah, it's like all the spiritual people that you know, and all the yoga teachers and everyone that you listen to, or that we listen to, we only hear the wins. We rarely hear about the losses and about the trials, because there are so many. And a lot, even people who are close to me now, they're going through like the beginning stages of spiritual unfolding, and there's just like lesson after lesson, trial after trial, difficulty after difficulty, and the difficulties never stop, but it seems to change with intensity and frequency, for sure. But I think that's an important thing to acknowledge, how far you've come in your practice, even if you haven't practiced much. If you just compare your meditation today to how it was 2 years ago, or you just compare how you feel about yourself and where you are spiritually now compared to a decade ago, you can't even compare those people. It's like a completely different, you're like a completely different person. So that's the beauty of spirituality and of awakening, and of having an open heart. We're able to see transformations and changes over time, and whether things are good or bad, you're open enough to accept them without resisting, without running away, without hiding. I think a heart of loving kindness really opens that power to stay present, to stay on the path.
And what you said just reminds me of something where you may be caught in a bad situation, but how much of it is still part of your own learning of lessons through loving kindness? Again, like I was saying before, when someone cuts you off, some people believe it's everything is communication through the universe. Maybe it's the universe trying to teach you in that moment, what you practiced beforehand should be applied now. Practice that love and kindness. There's situations that I was put in where I trusted my intuition. It was completely bad. What I thought it was bad, but it was what needed to be done. And it goes back to what Ryan said in the beginning, where the variances of love and kindness is unlimited. It may look like scolding at times, but it's not like negative scolding to say. It's almost like a mother's discipline, a father's discipline. I'm teaching you. And the universe does that for you all the time. It teaches you in ways that you may not like it. Again, this whole thing we've talked about, Ryan and I, has been things are easier, obviously, when things are going smoothly. But imagine those times where it isn't. Can you still practice? Can you still have love and kindness for the universe, for God, for Buddha, whoever your teacher is? Because in that moment, they disappear. They will disappear. You'll forget about them. Your whole practice and dharma goes bye-bye in those moments. And that's the biggest lesson. Can you still have faith in yourself and your teachings, who you are in those moments? And for sure, it's hard, and you sacrifice. But just like with the profession, you sacrifice a lot to get to the point of wherever you want to be. And if you want to be a deep spiritual practitioner, where you go off on retreats, where you sit down and meditate for hours, we honor that. And there will be sacrifices.
Yeah, it takes a lot of pain to be able to sit without moving initially for an hour, more pain to be able to sit without moving for 2 hours, and a whole lot of pain to be able to sit for 3 hours. But actually next week, Ricardo and I will do our R&R, and then we'll do a loving kindness meditation at the end, last 10 or 15 minutes of the show, and we'll alternate between the phrases for Ricardo and I. So him and I will practice that, doing this dual loving kindness meditation. I think that'll be really cool.
Yeah.
And it'll be probably the last R&R before our Brahma Viharas retreat. Ricardo and I are going to do a loving kindness retreat probably at the end of this month, going into the first week of March. So if anyone here wants to tune in to that, I'm sure some parts of the retreat will be airing live and sharing things with people. So and if you're our cultivator friends and want to join us, of course reach out and message Ricardo or I. We always love meditating with more people.
So what we're planning to do, everyone, is we're trying to live stream our retreat and do we want people to join. And anytime you feel like you can join, do it. Doesn't matter if it's for 10 minutes, doesn't matter what time, what day, just join. It's going to be through Twitch. Ryan and I will kind of communicate that through you guys. And we're trying to set up a way where we can have some of the donations you give to us will go to some sort of foundation, some of the proceeds, and see how this works out. So just keep heads up for that. We want you guys to join during this meditation of love and kindness retreat. So it's going to be awesome.
The more love, the better. So I think it'll be fun, and a lot of people want to come together and meditate together for this, because when we do loving kindness as a practice, especially as a group, the energy is just it just opens your heart. It's great. It really is beautiful. So we'll keep everyone updated on that, and surely we'll have the whole thing planned out by the next R&R next Monday. So that is it. You have any final words, Ricardo?
I love you guys.
Exactly. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we'll see all of you next week, 8 p.m.